I want to kind of share about why food? You know, why have I sort of centered my career around growing food, distributing food, educating about growing food, and how that connects to Millbrook and also sustainability. It's always amazing as soon as you start delving into what the ingredients are and where they came from, how far how many miles, is on your plate. And when you learn how to grow food and all the impacts that has socially and environmentally, it's powerful to be a part of that. I grew up watching things like this. Like, look at this amazing great blue heron flying with a giant branch because he's probably going to work on his nest. And connecting that experience of the natural world to resource use. And then I was like, oh, I want to go to Africa and study elephants because I grew up at the zoo and I love elephants and they're amazing and they communicate and they have these long memories. And I went to Kenya my junior year and I was just blown away by the people and resource use and the idea of conservation. You can't just conserve elephants without thinking about all the people and what people might need in order to thrive.
I basically put together a presentation today that takes you through a little bit of what I do as a golf course architect, but mostly kind of tells you the story of sort of how I first fell in love with golf and golf courses, and shows you a bunch of pictures from my journey across hundreds of golf courses around the world. So my senior year here was the first year of the CES project. And so I was absolutely the kid that decided to design a 9-hole golf course on the school's campus here. The first hole started over near, I don't know if he still lives there, but at the time Mr. Anthony lived down on School Road, and the course sort of went off into across the fields and out beyond that. Natural golf is absolutely my favorite sort of golf, and I've been around the world playing and studying the majority of the best courses, studying them. All courses are different, and I've been pretty fascinated by their strategies and the different features and things that make each one unique. I guess during that, my senior year at Hobart, I had, I was caddying at Quaker. I read this thing. It was called the Minimalist Manifesto, and it was written by this golf course architect. And it was about how the best golf courses and the golf courses that he wanted to build were supernatural, and they used the land and the environment. They didn't bring in giant bulldozers and totally recreate the universe everywhere and try to make them look the same. He really believed in using the ground for strategies and just trying to make every golf course unique and adapt to its own site. And I started writing hundreds of letters to golf architects all around the world. I wrote to Jack Nicklaus's office. They wrote back, they were like, thanks kid, we just fired like 22 people because the world is ending. Can't really help you. So what I ended up doing was I remembered that these guys had these projects coming up in China, so I bought myself a Rosetta Stone Mandarin and I started teaching myself Chinese on the evenings after caddying, and then I found this heavy equipment operating school, which is seems kind of like a far out thing, I'm sure, for most of you guys, but I went down to the middle of nowhere in Virginia with a bunch of guys that had like GEDs and wanted to be like union kind of contractor guys, but you could get like a certification to run a bulldozer and an excavator, because I found this one contractor in New Jersey. He's like, great kid, you can tell me all this cool stuff about golf courses. Can you get on a tractor and make me some money? This is at St. Andrews, the old course in Scotland. It's really the old course, the original. And so famously right next to the first and 18th holes, they have what's called the ladies putting course, or the Himalayas putting course. And it's basically just like, natural sand dunes and wrinkles and contours. And it's open to pretty much everyone that can hold a putter. They can go and learn and get a little bit of their first taste of golf and everything like that. So a lot of what we've done, whether it's at the Cradle at Pinehurst or some of my other clients and clubs and resorts, is trying to bring more of these sort of natural sort of mini golf type items out there and get kids inspired. This one course out on the North Fork of Long Island, it has the super sandy property. It feels like some of those kind of natural sand dunesy places you saw earlier. But when I get there, it kind of looks like this. They've got these like 4 little circle bunkers. They're kind of not that interesting. So I draw some kind of plans. Sometimes I'll do like a concept sketch. Now I'll fly my drone over, and then I'll take that, for both of these, I'll take a bunch of pictures, and then I'll either draw into them or on top of them to create a plan. And then to get on the bulldozer and try to naturalize it and sort of give it more of a sense of place.
I knew from a young age I was going to come to Millbrook. My dad told me stories of working at the zoo, doing falconry, bird banding, fishing at Tamarack, hunting. I was like, this is a school for me. I think Millbrook was the only school I applied to. I knew I was coming here. Consciously and subconsciously, or unconsciously, it set kind of my path forward in many ways that I didn't realize, and I didn't realize it at the time. And I think one of the general themes you've probably heard a lot about is this fork in the road, right? And the forks in the road that we're gonna encounter, whether it's choosing what college you're gonna go to, what your summer job is gonna be in college, what you're gonna do afterwards. I think one of the things, if I could get anything across to everybody today, is you're not gonna know the answer. The best thing you can do is figure out what you don't want to do. But I've always been an avid fly fisherman, and for never knowing what I really wanted to do led me to become a fly fishing guide, which was one of the most incredible experiences in my life. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. I didn't know what I wanted to do as a summer job. Called up my dad, said, what do you think? Should I come back to New York, get an internship at a finance firm? He goes, no, go work on a ranch. It'll be the coolest thing you ever do. And he wasn't wrong. I started calling ranches out in Colorado and Wyoming. Thinking I was going to go out and lay fence and weed whack pathways and basically do general maintenance on a ranch. One of the ranches I found was looking for a fly fishing guide, and naturally I was like, I know how to fly fish. I'm sure I could teach somebody how to do it. And that basically became kind of what I did. I went to guide school, and my summer job was being a fishing guide. What's really unique about that is the people you meet when you're a fishing guide or when you're a golf caddy or when you're doing something you're really passionate about, right? I was on Joan Rivers' TV show as her fly fishing guide. I took numerous kind of family office type clientele out, and it's one of the only places where you get to spend time with somebody for 10 hours a day, and they're stuck with you, and they're stuck with you in the middle of nowhere. And so you really get to know people, and actually as a fishing guide, the person that gave me my job and got me to move to DC was one of my clients, and I ended up working in wealth management because of it. A lot of what I've done with my life is this concept of how do I bridge my passions with my profession, and how do I think strategically about the conveniences I'm going to select and then the conveniences I'm going to avoid. At Millbrook, we learned to, you're basically leaving home at 13 to do your own laundry, make your own bed, get yourself to breakfast, and get yourself to class. You're all going to find when you go to college, you're going to be way ahead of everybody else. I mean, your friends in college will have never done their own laundry. They will never had to get themselves to school. And the bonds you build along the way are really powerful. And I think this is an important piece of it because it really sets the stages. You don't really, it's all subconscious right now, but what you don't realize is you're setting kind of these kind of responsibilities and these comforts with building strong connections with people away from home. And they're going to go all over the country, and they're going to be contexts that come back in your life down the road. So sustainability, what it means to me, I think it's exactly that. I kind of live a dual world, right? Monday to Friday, I put on a suit and tie, I go to a city, I sit at a desk, I work in the world of insurance, business development, finance, and at home, when I'm on my free time, I'm fly fishing, I'm gardening, I'm homesteading, and to me, I've always looked at it in 4 categories. It's personal, professional, charitable, and lifestyle. There are some times where it's uncomfortable. There's some times where we would hike 10 hours in the rain to then camp in the rain to then wake up in the rain, put everything away in the rain, and then hike another 10 hours in the rain. Right? That's very uncomfortable. But by doing so, when that rain lets up, I'm in northern tundra, Alaska, looking out over 25 square miles of valley and caribou. I've gotten involved in multiple nonprofits. I'm on the board of 2, the Potomac River Keepers Network, which is about protecting water quality through defense and litigation. Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership, which is about protecting public's right to hunting and fishing. I'm involved in Coastal Conservation Association, which is about protecting wildlife in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. In addition, I started a blog, which is not very active at the moment, but it was a great way for me I got very annoyed with the topic of sustainability and this push to what it should be without ever asking the question of why and how, all right? Don't use disposable plastic. Well, why? And is it better? Or use compostable plastic. It's better than single-use plastic. Well, that depends on where you are, right? I think if you have a commercial composting facility where you can compost that type of material, fantastic. But if not, it's actually worse than single-use plastic. Location, because it really depends on where you live. Sustainability is all just about where you live. So if you're in New York City, sustainability looks very different than if you're in rural Maryland, which looks very different than if you're in Alaska, right? And so what all this led to was me deciding that I wanted to bring it to the home front, and keeping in mind that a lot of times when we think about environmentalism and sustainability, we think about off the grid, kind of quote unquote like a hippie style of life, and that's not what it is at all. I think what I'm trying to bridge the gap between is helping people understand that homesteading can be as glamorous or as rugged as you want it to be. The property conversion, it started as a grass field. I mean, the first thing I ever did was I found 3 pallets on the side of the road and I built a composting bin. I realized, you know what? I'm gonna prove that you can do all this without any fertilizer input. There's no need to go out and buy all these products and make it an expensive thing. We're gonna do it all. Led to putting in raised garden beds. We eventually went and made the investment and bought a greenhouse. As you can see now, we've got about a 1/4 acre vegetable garden, and we're now working and shifting more towards how do we get rid of the grass and plant things like wildflowers, range swallows, bring back native habitat. Because there's nothing cooler than being in our backyard at sunrise and seeing 40 to 50 different bird varieties. It's 50 cents to buy an onion at the grocery store. Why are you doing all this? Why are you spending 150 days growing an onion? And I think it's because it changes my perspective on what food is and how we utilize it. So all of a sudden, our belief is that if we put these processes in place and if we really commit to doing it, it'll change the way not only we treat our property and the way we think about the environment, it also changes the way we eat and the way we think about food. I have found ways to take this and then apply it to the business world. Because a lot of what we do in talking with clients is, it's a trust-related business. But what you find is that most of the conversation is never about business. It's always about personal hobbies, personal passions, things you have in common. And so that's exactly what this has become. It's not only become kind of my food source and a fun project on the home front and a way to be more sustainable and more conscious about my inputs and outputs, but it's also been a great way to meet people and talk to people.
I'm a professional sailor most of the time, which has been true for the last 3 or 4 years since I graduated from college. I went to Kenyon College in Ohio, which is very far from the ocean. I did not know that I was going to be doing this when I was at Millbrook, but the idea was starting back then. Something I realized is that when I was finishing college in 2019, I had this thought in my head, like I want to cross the Atlantic Ocean. I've read books about it. I've been working as a sailing instructor as my summer job when I was at Millbrook. And I had this thought in my head that I wanted to cross the Atlantic. And I wrote it down in a journal. I want to cross an ocean, and I also want to be able to run 5 miles without stopping, and all these other things. And then in 2021, I sailed across the Atlantic from Maine all the way to Ireland, which took 15 days. And we saw lots of whales over here, and it was very similar actually to all the other trips that I've done, but it was like one of those things where then I was flipping back through that journal and realized that I'd done one of the things that I set out to do a couple years before, which is really cool. Something really cool about these passages is that once you leave the dock, let's say from Bermuda, sailing to Maine, whatever you have on the boat is what you have for the trip. So for the next 5 to 7 days, in the next 1,000 miles, whatever tools you brought, whatever food you brought, that's what you've got. sort of a cool lesson in conservation, and also like making do with what you have. So when things break, which they always do, I either know how to fix it or I figure out how to fix it with what we've got. When I was at Millbrook, I did a lot of art, a lot of photography, a lot of writing poetry and working at the zoo, and I think I wrote for the silo, and did 1 million different things when I was here, like what do you do, playing sports and all of that. And when I was thinking about this talk, I think one of the things that Millbrook gave me was, one, the excitement and ability to do lots of different things at once, and also I feel like I learned how to observe nature when I was here in a way that I definitely did not realize when I was at Millbrook. Ms. Blaney called me and asked me if I would come to the Sustainability Summit and talk about my job. And at first I was like, of course, like I'd love to come back to Millbrook and talk about things and meet the current students. And then I started feeling really self-conscious because I was like, I don't think my job is in sustainability. We sail across the ocean, so we're not burning diesel, like we're not motoring across the ocean. But then everyone flies home at the end of the trip, so like fossil fuels wise, we're not doing that great. So I started to worry about like maybe my job has nothing at all to do with environmental stewardship, and I shouldn't be here. And then I told myself to get over it and just come and figure that out. Figure that out as I was planning the talk. And I think there's lots of ways that environmental stewardship weaves its way in. There's like planning for these trips, conserving water on the boat, and traveling to these places that are very different environmentally, very different ecosystems. And I feel like I'm learning a ton about becoming sort of a naturalist at sea in all these different ways, learning about seabirds. Like there's all these ways that I'm like, yeah, the environment is a big, big part of my job. But when you think of it in this way of like, what is in your control? What's been put into your care? Maybe it's an animal at the zoo, or maybe it's the people who are in your dorm with you. Or for me, it's this boat and the people who live on it. Things start to feel a lot more manageable. So I really liked thinking about stewardship in that way. And in that way, I feel like I've been caring for both the boat and all the environments that we sail in and all the people who come sailing with us in so many different ways. And it's also been a nice way to like look back at the last few years of my life and realize all the twists and turns that have led me here, and to start think about what's coming next.
To put simply, Bread Alone is a family-owned business that puts first and foremost our mission of stewardship that Millbrook shares. And we do that in a couple of different ways. But before I talk about the way our values have developed over time, since the early 80s, I want to talk about the scale at which we do things. And so at Bread Alone, we bake 20,000 loaves a day, and that's 13 loaves per minute. And so we've been here for 7 minutes, and so I don't want to do the math. If anybody wants to for me, 7 times 13, we've done that many loaves. And so that scale is something that took a long time to get to. It's not the mission that my mom and dad had when they founded the bakery in the early 80s. Their mission was around community, and that community is something that we nurtured. No, please. That community is something that we've nurtured over time and have developed into the scale of the operation today. But put simply, we bake bread and we do it with a very high quality. And as I was thinking about the prompt of stewardship and representing what that means to me, there's this conflict that is raised between what Google is and what Bread Alone does. And if I'm honest, the reason that I'm here today is because of my family. And so I want to really talk about them. And two ways that I'm going to talk about them is my family's obsession with process and the path that all of us have taken, not all of us, my mom, my brother, and myself, the way that we are on our way to stewardship, intentionally in quotes here. For my family, our typical conversation had nothing to do with those. We always focused on, when we sat down at a restaurant, how that company runs their business. We constantly obsess over the process of how a restaurant does what they do on an everyday basis. Those fine numbers of the ingredients, where they came from, how high quality are they? Do they know the farmers? Do they go through a distributor? What distributor do we think they go through? So there's this obsession with the minutia of the everyday with this perspective on food that I was raised with and definitely translated over to the base. So when I think about the path to stewardship, there's this open question about what does it mean? What's a title? What's a role? What company? We don't have anybody with that title. We believe that it runs through the blood of every single person who works for us. And it's tied to our mission, both for the ingredients we use and the people that we hire. And in the early 80s, the idea of organic didn't really exist, according to my mom. And so it wasn't a regulation that the federal government had mandated or created a system around. It was wheat or that wheat or this wheat. When I think about crystallizing Bread Alone's values, thinking about what my mom wanted to do, build a community, serve good food, that's still something that we do today. So this is something that we call our mission or our value statement, and it's that Bread Alone is a family-owned, value-driven bakery. We have been baking with traditional methods and organic grains since our first loaf in 1983, and we continue to do so today. That statement we just saw is an idea, and the action associated with it is our commitment to the planet. That commitment has taken many forms over the years. Most recently is our investment in electrification. And so that original facility that we saw, that tiny little hut, that is now a 20,000 square foot building that 1/3 of its electricity is powered by solar energy. In addition to that, we have 2 forms of baking. One is based on electricity, these are mechanical ovens, and the other is a hearth. I've been realizing it's hard with the light, but that fire is facilitated by recycled wood. The next action that represents our idea of stewardship is our commitment to our people. And so our employees, I mentioned my mom and my brother, but we have over 250 employees at the bakery. And every single one of them works incredibly hard to deliver the bread that we deliver to all of you, the people who have had Bread Alone in the past, that it's in your fridge right now. Our commitment to our people is one of the actions that we see as fundamental to our path of stewardship. And so for us, stewardship, climate, the ingredients we use is one element, but we can't do it without 250 people also. And so that investment is just as, if not more important. The most important thing that I will answer right now is why I don't work at Bread Alone today. Right now, the reason that I don't work at Bread Alone is because I think I can be a better Bread Alone employee if I become one, if I do it in 5 years. Part of that is because Google affords me unique opportunities to work in an enormous organization. There are complexities to working in a company with 170,000 employees that can only happen at a company with 170,000 employees. And if I were to work at Bread Alone, I'll never develop those skill sets that I can bring to Bread Alone and help us be that little bit more productive. And so my mentality about Google is that it's a form of school. It's my path to stewardship, as I mentioned a little bit before. And so this exercise of thinking about making an impact in stewardship, assuming it's Bread Alone, no matter what, Google is the best option for me. And so that idea of thinking about the path that I'm on, and that even if I'm not doing something today, I can have a vision of the future, is something that is really the center point that I would want to leave you all with today.